Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Risks from Privileged User to Your Data Security. Before we get started, I did like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. Right now, we have everyone on mute to avoid background noises. You will have the opportunity to submit text question to today's presenter by typing your questions into questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentation. We will address them during the Q&A session at the end of today's presentation. Now I will ask our presenter, Mr. Saptarshi Biswas, IT security expert of Leo Technosoft, to take on the session ahead.
Thanks, Aksha. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Uh, Today, I'm going to talk on risks from privileged accounts, and I will straight away go to the slide. Okay, the new cyber battleground inside your network. Over 90% of organizations have been breached. Information security focus shifts to inside the network. Compliance and audit requirements focus on privileged accounts. So, the new battleground for cyber attacks is not outside the perimeter, it's actually inside your network. With today's advanced attacks, example malware and phishing, it makes it easy to breach the perimeter. Therefore, protecting the perimeter is not an effective strategy. Strategies must move inside the organization, assuming the attacker is already there. And attacks aren't always coming from outside. While not as common as external attacks, internal breaches typically have much bigger impact. You can think of Edward Snowden. Regardless of how the attack originates, once an attacker is inside the perimeter and has access to privileged credential, the attacker has full control of the network, including desktop, laptops, servers, security solutions, domain controllers, and databases and applications. In essence, a compromised credential means you have completely lost control of your infrastructure and the tools you have invested in to protect the network. Because privileged accounts are powerful and pervasive, they are an important aspect of many compliance regulations. Failure to meet compliance requirements can lead to brand damage and significant costs due to failed audits. Let's move on to the next slide. 54%, if you're only looking at malware, it's not the full story. 94% people need to be told that they have been breached. 243 lack of visibility into attacks. 100% of all involve stolen credentials. Privileged accounts are targeted in all advanced attacks. APT intruders prefer to leverage privileged accounts where possible, such as domain administrators, service accounts, domain privileges, local administrator accounts, and privileged user accounts. Anything that involves serious intellectual property will be contained in highly secure systems, and privileged accounts are the only way hackers can get in. That's how I know I'm dealing with a sophisticated adversary if they're targeting privileged accounts. Then I have got a serious APT problem. Privileged accounts are a built-in vulnerability. Simply put, privileged accounts are built-in vulnerabilities throughout your infrastructure. If you put yourself in hacker shoes, you will need access to particular network segment, or you will need to change the firewall rules to enable external communications, or you would want to gain access to the domain controller, or want to dump the database tables to capture a competitor's customer list. Unprotected, unmonitored, privileged accounts are the way to go. Going to the next slide. This shows a typical life cycle of a cyber attack. There are external threats and internal threats. Since we are talking of privileged accounts, we will talk only about internal threats. So internal threats already have got access. They need to escalate their privileges, do a reconnaissance, a lateral movement, and exfiltrate data to competitors. Scope of privileged account attack surface underestimated. In your estimation, how many privileged accounts are there in your organization? This is a question, even if we ask the security admin, they are not very sure of how many privileged accounts are in their network or in their infrastructure or in their systems. Do you monitor record privilege activity? How do you monitor record privilege account activity? Some are doing paper based, some have got homegrown software, some are using IM solutions, few of them are using PIM softwares, that is privilege identity management software. Many people are using SIMs, many people are using database activity monitoring, and there are other tools. Privilege accounts create a huge attack surface. Privilege accounts exist in every connected device, database, application, industrial controllers, and more. Typically, the ratio is 3x of privilege accounts to employees. What, where, and why of privilege accounts. So now I'm going to talk about what is a privileged account, what is a privilege account monitoring, and why do organizations require privilege account monitoring. What is a privileged account? Privileged users include not just administrators, but a much wider group within an enterprise. Having extra privileges in the IT environment, these super users represents a security risk for the business as they can access and manipulate sensitive systems and data. Protecting critical IT assets from advanced cyber attacks using privileged accounts causes headache for security managers as well. Though logging and SIM tools do a good job at presenting event data, they have limitations and cannot capture all the required user information. Privileged user accounts have direct access to sensitive data systems, making them a key component of network security. A compromised privileged user account can result in the loss of intellectual property, compromised data integrity, and damaged reputation. In addition to their high clearance levels, accounts with escalated privileges also pose a significant insider threat. As a result, it is considered a best practice to closely monitor privileged account users. Now, what is privileged account monitoring? The need to control and monitor the action of privileged users is typical in the finance, telecommunications, cloud providers, and public sectors. These organizations operate critical infrastructures and handle large amount of sensitive data, the strict protection of which is vital from compliance, reputation, and in some cases from national security reasons as well. Privileged account monitoring tools can be an ideal solution to these challenges. These tools can restrict privileged access to IT resources and control user sessions. They can even monitor administrative activities and collect audit information for forensic situations, compliance reports, and so on. By implementing PAM, your organization will be able to control the work of its internal IT administrators, powerful business users, as well as its outsourcing partners. Advanced PM tools support movie-like playback and fast free text search in user activities, which dramatically speeds up troubleshooting and forensic investigations. These solutions control and audit who, when, and what have been done, for example, in the financial or SAP system. Aware of this, your employees will do their work with greater sense of responsibility. Thus, the number of human errors can be reduced. By having a tamper-proof activity record, accountability issues can be eliminated. In addition, PAM tools help to fulfill the monitoring specific requirements of various regulations. Examples are PCI, SOX, ISO 27001, HIPAA, and so on, supporting you to pass compliance audits quickly and cost efficiently. Why do organizations require privilege account monitoring? A US-based global energy company employee with privileged user access was enticed by a foreign company to steal source code and other intellectual property from his employer. As a result of his theft, the company lost three quarters of its revenue, half of its workforce, and more than 1 billion in market value. This incident caused such extensive damage one might consider it to be an anomaly, but it is not. It is an all too common example of one of the costliest risks companies face daily, that of privileged user abuse. According to a national fraud survey, $348 billion a year in corporate losses can be tied directly to privileged user fraud. Because privileged users have greater access and are limited by fewer controls, they have access to more of their company's intellectual property, such as corporate data or confidential customer information. They may also have access to company computer assets that an average employee does not. For example, laptop, USB devices, removable HD, etc. Having access to these assets may enable bad behavior by the privileged user, aiding the mentality that they are somehow above the law and not subject to the security restrictions that apply to other employees. Other factors that contribute to privileged users' potential to cause intense damage are they generally operate at a higher level on the network, which provides them with access to enterprise information. They know how to operate around and routinely defeat standards and technical controls. They are authorized to make changes and access data at very high levels. There is often inadequate or no monitoring of privileged users, and they as individuals and their tools, applications, remote access computing resources are high value target for attacks and or coercion. In this slide we see what should be monitored. The few examples are a new account added to a privileged group, user impersonating an admin or privileged account, unauthorized mailbox access, list of users with escalated privileges. So basically, we need a list of users with escalated privileges if we want to monitor the privileged user or a group of privileged users. List of groups where any member of the groups inherits elevated privileges. List of sensitive exchange user accounts. Mass file deletion by a privileged user. Password change on multiple accounts by a privileged user. Multiple accounts deleted by a privileged user. Multiple accounts disabled by a privileged user. Multiple users added to privileged group. Multiple users removed from privileged group. So these are the small list we have created regarding what should be monitored. Out here we have given an example. So this example shows that a rogue insider has got access, has obtained intellectual property, and has shared with the competitor. So that poses a big security risk. Then this shows Chinese hacks into US weather system and satellite network. This is a part of external attack. So now we are seeing the framework of a retail breach. So attackers can access via compromised third-party accounts. Once they're inside the network, what they will need to do, they will need to escalate their privileges. For example, via pass the hash. And once necessary privileges are obtained, then they install malware on the POS systems. And once that is done, you can exfiltrate data using remote administration tools. How do we prevent it? The privileged account security maturity model. So there's baseline maturity, medium maturity, and high maturity. You discover and control, manage and monitor, expand scope and automate. Baseline maturity, discover and control. Out here, inventory the privileged accounts. So when I say inventory the privileged accounts, I mean create an inventory of privileged passwords. Create an inventory of privileged accounts. Privileged passwords which are used to have access to administrative account information and to perform system administrator functions exist in virtually every device or software application in an organization. Many companies begin the process of securing the privileged passwords by talking an inventory of how many exist and how often they are updated. In this effort, it is important to note that privileged passwords can reside in many places, including administrative accounts that are shared by multiple IT professionals and that come predefined by the manufacturer, including Unix root accounts, Cisco's enable mode, and Windows administrator accounts. Hard-coded and embedded application accounts, including resource database IDs, generic IDs, batch jobs, testing scripts, and application IDs that secure backend activities. The second one is limit standard user accounts. Then establish on and offboarding process. Remove non-expiring passwords. We see to it that none of the passwords are non-expiring. All passwords should have some kind of expiry date like 30 days, 45 days, 60 days, or 90 days routine. Securely store passwords. Okay. So, although this may sound obvious, it is imperative that organizations store their privileged passwords in the most secure vaulting systems available. That is a system that provides multiple security layers, such as the use of file access control, encryption, authentication, and firewalls. Storing passwords in sealed envelopes, locked binders, encrypted files that can be easily decrypted, or on wallet-sized cards should not be acceptable alternative. Ensure attribution. What do I mean by that? Ensure that unique identifiable accounts are linked to individual users and the account is authenticated every time privileged access is granted on a system. This will ensure accountability and attribution of all actions. Let's go to the medium maturity model. So in the medium maturity, we manage and monitor. We manage and monitor schedule password changes, utilize one-time passwords, implement session recording, prevent human usage of service accounts. What do I mean by prevent human usage of service accounts? Okay, allowing service accounts to be used interactively presents a significant vulnerability that can be eliminated with relative ease once an inventory of accounts is established. Service accounts are highly privileged, being members of either a local administrators group on a given set of systems, or in extreme cases, being members of domain admins or equivalent groups within Active Directory. This means that should the service process be compromised in any way, so too will any system over which the account has privileged control. An extremely common example of this is an account to support automated server backup process. The next one is control application accounts and detect anomalies. So let's go to the next one, that is high maturity, expand scope and automate. Use multi-factor authentication. So we use multi-factor authentication wherever necessary. We use HOTP based multi-factor authentication or TOTP based, that is time based one-time password multi-factor authentication. We replace all hard-coded passwords in applications. We employ next generation jump servers. So what are jump servers? In today's data center, system administrators, remote desktops, or secure shell access to the servers they're administrating directly from their desktops, and this itself presents a huge security risks. Jump servers has emerged in recent years as security best practice to create a separation between networks with different security requirements. Creating separation is strongly recommended to minimize the risk of a potential attacker accessing critical systems. Whitelisting server access to just the jump server significantly reduces the threat landscape and also eliminate the concern for a single point of failure. We are closely working with a tool called Proacti. They have added session management to monitor and record all access through the jump server. The tightly integrated SSH proxy is context aware and can be configured to look for anomalous behavior. Not only can you control who has access to what through the jump server, but you can alert on suspicious or anomalous activity within those sessions. Both secure RDP to Windows servers as well as SSH to Unix, Linux network appliances are managed via Privileged Session Manager on the jump server. Implement The next point is implement approval and monitoring workflows. Of course, automated workflow-based access requests and approval process using job role or application access matrices and segregation of duties checking. This helps increase the consistency and efficiency of your security procedure and reduce the risk of inappropriate access. Proactively detect malicious behavior. Continuous monitoring with real-time analytics to detect in-progress attacks and enable immediate response to alerts of suspicious behavior. Critical steps to stopping advanced threats. The first thing we do is we discover all of your privileged accounts. The next step is protect and manage privileged account credentials by vaulting, password vaulting. Control, isolate, and monitor privileged access to server and databases. And lastly, use real-time privileged account intelligence to detect and respond into in-progress attacks. So a requirement For an effective privileged account security solution, so we have got protection from advanced threats, mitigate insider threats, master high stakes compliance. If you further break them, we have got application identity controls, privileged activity monitoring. We protect and isolate sensitive assets. We provide granular privileged access controls, and we also provide privileged user access controls. Out here, we have just given examples of few tools like Manage Engine PM Tool Dashboard. Then we have got Logarithm PM Tool Dashboard. Need to manage, control, monitor. So this is, as I said before, we are working with a productized solution, and they have come up with new technology called privileged management infrastructure. So nowadays the need of PMI supporting a strong authorization subsystem via the management and use of privileges to secure and protect IP. Infrastructure should provide secure access to any target resource that they specify based on policy to deal with next-gen cyber attacks. Organization needs to be sure that access to the resources is controlled by a variety of security mechanisms to ensure that the party requesting access is who they say who they are, that is authentication. The party has sufficient rights to access the resource, that is authorization. Confidential material is only read by those authenticated and authorized parties. Transaction is monitored. Standardization is cross-domain user provisioning. Stronger authentication authorization through multi-factor authentication. Centralized IAM for different purposes and populations. Now, what is a privilege management infrastructure? What Proacta is providing? So it's an integrative approach where we have got identity management, we have got authentication services, authorization services, privilege usage management, and threat and risk management. So in identity management, we have got federated IAM, we provide provisioning, we provide deprovisioning. In authentication services, we are providing hardware-based authentication as well as software-based authentication. We have got self-service, password management, network authentication, single sign-on, identity verification. In authorization service, we have got policies for to enforce any kind of rule. We define policies, policy management, role management, resource and data management. And in threat and risk management, we have got privilege activity monitoring. We have got audit and protection, that is compliance. We have got security user behavioral analytics, and we have got threat and risk alerting. So this is a integrative approach, and all the tools out here are deployed in one single machine, and the deployment is extremely simple, and it's very adaptable. We provide modular architecture, and if any business unit requires just identity management, or let's say just threat and risk management, we can provide the same. So out here I would like to end this session and open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Saptarishi. We are now going to begin answering the questions submitted during the presentation. You can still submit questions through the question pane in your attendee control panel. So we have now one question.
Okay, so we have a question regarding the jump servers. I mean, somebody has asked what exactly our jump servers are. Um let's say a jump server is a server which is given in the infrastructure which separates or segregates the system from more critical resources. So basically, a user, let's say a customer, will connect to the jump server first, and then from the jump server, they will access the resource for whatever they would want to access. And what we have done is we have given session management in our jump server. So once the user connects to our jump server and whatever actions is performed by the user, all of those will be recorded, and we can view their behavior. And in case of any kind of anomalous behavior, we can disable it, or we can alert the appropriate person. I hope that clears the answer.
Thank you, everyone, and for attending today's webinar. If you have any other questions, please contact Leo Technosoft. You can see our contact details on screen. On behalf of Leo Technosoft and our other presenters, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day.